What up, wackadoos? Welcome back. We're doing truck stuff. So I've been working on a bunch of projects on the truck, and I feel really good about where I've gotten, and I think it's time to move on to the next part. So I think we're going to start working on the bed and doing some of that fabrication work and getting the ramp bed ready to actually do some ramp truck stuff. So don't forget to subscribe and stick around, leave a comment, like the video, and let's show you what I've gotten done so far. So one of those things is the Suburban mirrors just did not work. I couldn't see anything. The bed is actually wider than the width of the truck. So with those Suburban mirrors, I couldn't see anything. And if I could, when I was going down the driveway, I couldn't see the end of the driveway because they weren't tall enough. So I could either see way behind me or nothing. So I found these. These are your standard tow mirrors from like a Duramax. And I made some adapters to put them on the stocks for the Suburban. They're a little wobbly, and I'll work on that just because the actual sheet metal flexes. But I actually can see, and they don't look too terrible. They are a little bit bigger than your stock mirrors, but they don't look like the big 3-post mirrors, so I feel good about that. Let's show you what I got done inside. So this is what I've been working on for the most part. This center console had to fill in this space nicely, and I wanted to have a few provisions for the things that I was going to need. So there's our reverse cam. We're going to have our windshield washers and our horn buttons go right there. And obviously this is going to be the shifter for the automatic. Now we still have a stick shift, so I'm going to have to take all this back out so I can put the stick shift back on so I can move the truck. But now this is made, I'm ready for when we put an automatic in. So still got to work on that a little bit. That's not done, but it is mocked up. So I showed you guys how I made the shift handle in the last video. Let me show you the other side. Over on this side, you can see that we have all of our control panel switches. So this is going to be for all the bed accessories and stuff like that. And then down here, fold out cup holders, and put a coffee cup in there. Get that out of the way, it looks nice and smooth. And then we got a cigarette lighter plug, so we can put a phone charger in there, whatever we gotta do. So I feel pretty good about that. So that's nice and tidy. And the way that I spaced it, it makes it so that if somebody is sitting in the middle, they can still put their legs into the passenger side footwell, and it's not terribly uncomfortable to ride with 3 people up front. So pretty happy with that. But like I said, unfortunately it does have to come back out so I can put the shifter back in. But it'll be wrapped up and in a safe place so that as soon as the automatic goes in, I can go ahead and permanently install the center console. The other thing that took up a lot of my time was hooking up the stereo. Now, like I said, we're not wiring everything right now. We're basically going to be wiring the dash and all these accessories all at once so that we can run new wires and new fuse panels and all that. But I wanted to test run the stereo since I did get the subs installed, and I got both amps and all the speakers and all that stuff. So I pre-wired everything, so now all I have to do is run power and ground, and the stereo is done. But I was able to play with it, and it sounds awesome. That took up a lot more of my time than I thought it was gonna. Now we get to move on to something a little more exciting. So with the exception of obviously having to wire the dash and the doors and all the other accessories, which is all just going to be a big wiring party, for the most part the interior is done. Now obviously I haven't had the ability to have the seats reupholstered yet because it's going to cost an exorbitant amount of money. So I just threw some seat covers on there because it's not a priority right now. I still have 1 or 2 little things to button up inside of the cab, but for the most part I'm content and able to move on. Now body work is obviously going to be for another day. That's going to be its own whole nightmare. So it's time to move on to something more important. And I think that's going to be the bed. So that bed is a nightmare, and I'm going to show you guys some of the stuff that's got to happen to that thing. But we got to start by taking a bunch of stuff off of it. There's so much crap just welded to it. I got to start sawing it off just to see what we're working with. So I think I'm going to pull the center console out so I can put the shifter back in, spin this thing around, start taking a look at that bed. Okay, we got her back in the garage. It actually fits pretty good. We got some room to work around this thing. So we're going to be putting something to the test here. I got a bunch of stuff that needs to come off this bed, including all the sides and everything else, but we're going to try these things out. Supposedly these Diablo blades last 50 times longer than a regular blade. I'll be the judge of that. So we need to cut this huge hunk of crap winch mount off. This big Ramsey winch does work, and we might do something with it later, but not for this project. It's got to come off. It's too big, it's too bulky, and doesn't pull enough for its ginormousness. These are going to come off. I don't like where they're at. I don't like what they used. I don't like these plasma cut ear things sticking off there either. So those got to go. Got these big donuts hanging off the back. Those got to go. The old ramp mount is crooked and thin, and that's got to go. The ball hitch is just welded straight into the frame. You can't interchange it, and it's freaking crooked. So we're going to cut that off, cut all this stuff off, and basically just start removing things that don't need to be on there to get an idea of what we're looking at. And then we're going to be taking the skins off of both sides so that I can see what's behind it, try and reinforce the frame as best I can, make sure that everything's actually strong, and then I can reskin this stuff a little more properly. Well, we got one piece of that angle iron off before we turned our 50-time longer lifespan Diablo blade into a gummer. So we're done with that. We're going to go back to what we were using before. Managed to get the other ones knocked off, and we're going to start working on the front tomorrow. But for now, I mean, it's a good start. We've got a lot less crap on there. And I think ultimately all of this is going to have to come off because I'm going to reskin all this, and I want to put some structure underneath there if there's not already. I haven't looked underneath. I just need to get some of that off. Alright, day's not getting any longer, so I'm going to jump on starting to cut on the front. Hopefully I'm going to be able to get that winch off there today. That's my big plan. So, see if we can get it done.
2 hours later.
That is remarkably heavy. And I got to cut off the switch. It took pretty much all day, but I managed to get all this stuff cut off. And there was an abundance of it. This piece being the one that took the longest because it's tied into the frame of the bed. But now I got most of this stuff off. I'll be able to clean this up, grind all this back, and get it all clean. But that gets rid of everything that was up there and in the way and gives me a nice fresh slate so I can go ahead and put things the way they need to be. So I'll clean that up probably tomorrow. Alright, another windy day. We're going to start grinding all this stuff off the bed. So I got the bulk of it cut off. I'm going to try and cut off a little bit more, and then whatever I can't cut off, I have to start grinding off. So I can try and get at least a workable flat space on the bed so I can start taking measurements and seeing what I want to fill this space with, winches and things of that nature. So start by cutting off the rest of it, then I'm going to start grinding, and then I can start worrying about trying to get the sheet metal off of the sides so I can replace all that. But I think on the top, I'm going to leave the sheet metal there, and I'm just going to go over the top of it with some wood and then bed liner over that. That way it's serviceable. We'll deal with all that later. For now, I'm going to start grinding. After hours of grinding, I managed to get the rings off of the back. Got everything stripped off of the top here. You can see that I got everything all removed from here. Now these spines actually go into the frame, so we're going to reuse those probably and use that as our winch plate. We're going to tie in a bigger winch plate and a new winch there in the middle. Something a little less intrusive than this one. But we managed to get everything all smoothed out. So it took a lot longer than I thought. But now that it's done, I feel pretty good about it. The next step is going to be trying to cut off sheet metal off the sides here. And not necessarily that there's anything inherently wrong with the sheet metal, so much as the fact that it's clearly not straight anymore. So I don't know how they managed to get it so dented, but the easiest way to figure it out is to remove it, and then I'll have access to underneath, and I'll be able to see what needs to happen to reinforce everything. Okay, so it seems like most of the sheet metal on the outside is attached to like a 3/16 frame on the inside, and so far I've been able to just kind of do this can opener effect here, and I'm able to kind of pop the welds off. I might be able to get away with doing a lot less cutting and grinding on this than I thought, as long as the weld pour performance continues to be this consistent. But so far it's starting to come off. it's a good start. So in an odd twist of events, we actually had a little bit of luck here on the ramp truck, and all of the sheet metal that's on the sides of the bed was just tacked into place. So between Daniel and I and a couple of pry bars, we were able to actually snap off all the sheet metal on the sides. Now, there's still a lot of stuff underneath that I got to deal with that's really kind of janky, especially with the structure, the way that it was holding up most of the sheet metal, and particularly with the actual structure welded to the frame. So there's going to be a lot of reinforcement and stuff like that that's going to come up later, and I'll show you guys some of the extent of the damage and what I'm going to have to fix and make better in the next video. But for now, I'm excited to see that we already got all the sheet metal off. So take a look at this. Now with the framing exposed, I can get an idea of what all has to be redone. So we're going to be adding a bunch of reinforcement throughout all this. I'm going to be adding multiple layers of storage throughout the entirety of the bed and replacing all this sheet metal with nice clean sheet metal. But we're able to get it off and I didn't have to grind every inch of it. So that's a good start. Same thing over here. And you can see that these also weren't symmetrical. Both sides, it was like two different people. One guy welded that side, one guy welded this side. So we're gonna have to get a little creative to try and patch it up and make it so that both sides are the same and get rid of this big nasty box so I can put in some better storage. But once again, we're able to get it all off and all this extra sheet metal can go to the dump. So obviously we're gonna be jumping into the biggest part of the project, which is reworking this bed. So I got a lot of work to do and that's all gonna start on the next one. So be sure to subscribe and follow along so you can watch as we get this thing ready to start doing some work. But for this week, that's it. Wackadoo out.